a gap in between, and I'm not saying we will go that long, but we need to sort of talk to you to have a gap in between the restarting, or we
No,
just keep
no.
it?
Like if it's 2:30, he was just warning us that the record ends at 2:30. So
Okay.
if it's going to go past 2:30, we just have to go and say, hey, start another record, and then they'll start it again.
Okay, all right. So we don't need to do anything.
No,
Okay.
not at all.
And in terms of us starting now, what do we need to
So I think we're going to hold up this slate, and then I'm going to turn down the lights.
So Nicole, I might check the time once or twice just to so we
Just
know
to have
where
an
we are.
idea, yeah. When it's
Set on your color. Any questions? That's probably best just right here.
Like on the jacket.
Yep.
Like that?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think Nicole pulls up that slate to give me.
Yes. So this is a slate that we just use at the beginning of the interview, and you know if you hold it like this, then I will say today's date is
okay.
25th, and my name is da-da, and then
So
you'll give it back to me, so you're not holding this for the whole interview.
Okay.
And then we'll start the interview with
Okay.
the very straightforward questions, and we'll just go from there. Okay. So if I hand this to you,
Like this?
yeah, I assume that's visible.
Just a little higher. Just up towards your neck, just a little bit.
Oh, you want higher?
Higher, yes.
Oh, I see.
All right. We are rolling.
So today's date is Friday, August 25th, 2023. I'm interviewing Nicole Spinner on behalf of the US Seashore Foundation. The interview is taking place in the studios of WJLA in Arlington, Virginia, in the United States of America. My name is Crispin Brooks, the interviewer, and the language of the interview will be in English. Can I take this slide? Thank you, Nicole. Okay, so please state your name.
Nicole Aimé Spinner.
And what was your name at birth?
Jalère. My last name was Jalère.
And the same first and middle names?
Yes. Nicole Aimé Jalère.
And what did people call you growing up?
They call me Nini, probably. Or, Nini, what I remember. Nini, Nini Bleu, Niquette, later on.
And is there any special significance to your name? Were you named after anyone?
No, the significance is my middle name, Aimé, which means beloved. And that's very nice of my dad and mom to call me like this.
When were you born?
I was born May 1st, 1936.
And where were you born?
I was born in Bernay, in France, in the department of Eure. But I grew up in the small village of Montreuil-l'Argilais, in the same department, not far from where I was born. Bernay was the hospital town, so that's why I was born there.
And to talk about some of your family members, what was your mother's name?
My mother was Toni Segal, and she was born in Romania, in Iași, in northeast Romania. And my dad was also born in Romania, close to Iași, but in a small village of Targo Frumos. My grandparents, on my mother's side were in Bucharest, on my father's side in Targov Frumos.
And did the
Well, I
grand-
should say, no, I'm wrong, not in Bucharest, in Iași, in Iași and my grandparents, in Targov Frumos.
And did they stay there through the war?
They stayed, my maternal grandparents moved from Iași to Bucharest after the pogrom in Iași. My paternal grandparents stayed in Targov Frumos until my grandmother died in 1945. My grandfather decided to go to Israel to spend his last years in Israel, where he died in Israel. And the rest of my mother's brother and sister survived the war. Some remained in Romania. Some moved to Israel in the 60s, actually. But she was the only one who died during the war.
Did you ever meet any of your grandparents?
Only I was one in 1937 when I was one. I have a picture, of course I don't remember. I have a picture of my paternal grandparents who came to France. And actually I brought the picture along. My maternal grandparents, my mother might have taken me very early on, maybe 37 or 38, but I don't remember, of course. I never saw them, so I did not really know them.
How about the aunts and uncles on both sides?
The aunts and uncle, some went to Israel. At the time, I had not known them. I did not see them in Israel.
And so most of the family remained in Romania.
Exactly.
What
Survived.
What brought your parents to France?
I think at the time, Paris or France was attractive to them as a good country, free country. And my father, who already had a degree, who had already practiced medicine in Iași, wanted to go to practice medicine in France. And at the time, I think the French were looking for a lot of doctors in the early 30s. And this is what he decided to move to France. And he studied in France, of course, had to study again to get a French degree. And then was able to, probably 1934 or 35, go to this small village where they needed a doctor, always a doctor. And he was they were extremely happy to have done the move. Yeah, they were quite happy. And this was an agricultural area with a lot of dairy farms. It's known for the butter in that area and the camembert cheese. And the farmers sometimes paid them in chickens or ducks. And I actually have a picture of my mother feeding the ducks, which she never did in Iași. So everything was going quite well until 1940, when he was not allowed to practice anymore.
Can I, before we get on to the
Right.
war and the occupation,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a little more about your family and growing up in Montreuil. What do you know about how your parents met and when and where that happened?
They met in Yash. I don't know exactly how it happened. I am sorry for not asking more questions when I could have asked questions. But they probably were evolving in the same kind of atmosphere, I should say. And they were actually not living far from each other. So, or they met through friends, I don't really know exactly.
And do you know, were the grandparents on both sides, were they traditional? Were they kind of secular? How would
The maternal grandparents were secular.
Mm-hmm.
The paternal grandparents, no. My grandfather, who wanted to go to Israel at the end of his life, was rather religious. He was a baker in that small town of Targofurmas. I don't know exactly, what kind of bakery or this was probably quite difficult because it was. But he was the only one that I know who was a religious person. None of the other members of the family were.
And on the maternal side, do you know what they did for a living?
Yes, I think they had a store with cloth, textile, or I think they were probably more bourgeois than the Targofurmas than the other side, I would think.
And which grandparents was it that visited you in France?
The one from Targofurmas, the baker and his wife.
That must have been quite a trip in those times.
In 1937, yeah, I think a long train ride, definitely. Yes, absolutely.
And do you have any brothers and or sisters?
Step-brother and stepsister.
From before the war or after?
After the war.
What was your earliest memory?
Of the village or of...
Just in general, earliest thing you can think of.
My earliest memory? I have to try to think. Probably of being awakened on a Christmas night to see the tree in Montreuil. We're staying with friends, not in my house. Being awakened to see the tree, yes. This probably when I was maybe 4. That's probably the earliest.
And when you think back to that kind of time, before the occupation, or very early years of your life, what pictures come to you of your home?
Very happy, secure and happy. Very happy home, actually. Right.
Can you describe what it looked like?
From what I remember, no, I cannot. I don't remember enough before the war. just being very happy going to school. And
Did you have your own room?
yes, but really, I do not remember the house. I do not remember that. I do not.
Going back, because obviously you were very, very young then.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of toys, or do you remember playing at that time? Special books that were meaningful to you?
Not before. No. Mm-mm.
And you mentioned the Christmas tree being put up in the
Right,
village.
yeah, but this is really the earliest. This is just vague.
How did you have friends in the?
Yeah, I had friends, and actually in '94, when I went back to the village for the dedication of my mother's name, I saw friends with whom I used to go to school, definitely. And after that, I had a correspondence with them, and I had friends which, of course, they had changed quite a bit, but they remembered, that remember me, and I remember them by the name, not the way we were looking at it. Years later.
Are there any names of people you remember that you'd like to name?
Right, but these people don't live anymore, and
And in Montreuil, was there a Jewish community?
no, we were the only Jewish family. But there was a street called the Street of the Jews, which I did not know at the time, and I only discovered that years later, walking around town. I did not know. There had been Jews in the 15th century or 16th century there, right? Otherwise, no, we were the only Jewish family, so.
And can you picture the town for us? Tell us, what it's, or the village. Or how
Yeah,
it is.
the town really has one main street, but the mayor, the city hall existed, and the city hall was at the time, which is now the city hall, was actually the school, the elementary school for boys and girls. But it's just one street which has actually pretty, for a small village, the pharmacy, 2 bakeries, a butcher shop, a shop selling newspapers. At the time, of course, there was a blacksmith. There was of course, there was a garage to have the cars repaired. But pretty much all the basic things that people need. And now it's remained pretty much the same, except now there's a small, very small supermarket. And there is a couple coming from Tunisia, I think, who sells kebab and doing quite well. Actually, we spoke to them. And they say, people, especially the young people, come and buy our food. So it's very good. It's very good.
And the house that your family lived in, where was it in relation to the main street?
It was on the main street. Of course, I forgot there is also a church. Yeah. And we were pretty much close to the church, on that main street, at the entrance of town, actually.
And you mentioned to me just before, and actually when we talked earlier, that this was a doctor's house?
This was the village had decided that they always wanted a doctor in their village. So this was always the doctor's house, always. So there was always a doctor there. And after my dad had to leave, there was another doctor who came, and on, always.
So where were the patients seen?
There was a waiting room, you know. It was a normal two-story house, actually. A nice old brick house, which has remained exactly the way it was in the 30s, or really nice brick. But actually, in the back there was an orchard. Now it's more of a parking lot, but the house has remained exactly the same.
Is it still a doctor's?
No, when we went, there were these 3 refugees from Ukraine. The doctor is still a doctor in the village, but has moved to a different place. But there is a doctor. They wanted a doctor, always.
And tell us, because you told me off camera about the refugees from Ukraine. What happened there?
I don't know. Well, I did not talk to them. I did not go in the house. But I guess the mayor and the city council decided to give them refuge, and the people in town were agreeing. And so now this is not anymore the doctor's house. This is refugees' house, which is very good.
And so you were saying there was like some kind of waiting room, and where they saw the patients. This would be on the street level, downstairs?
Yes, downstairs.
So you lived upstairs? Or?
We lived upstairs. Well, there was a waiting room, but there was also there was a dining room. I've seen pictures of the dining room, actually. So this was large enough for us to live. We were just the 3 of us. And the rest of the house, yeah.
And roughly when was it when your parents, well, first of all, when did they move from Romania to France?
I would say 1931, early 30s. I don't know exactly, but I would say 31.
And when did they get to Montreuil?
I think my dad had his degree from the French medical school, Paris, and in 34, so I suppose not before 34, maybe 34, 35.
And do you know, and again, you may not know the answer to these questions, but I'll ask anyway. Do you know kind of who they socialized with, your parents?
Yeah, they socialized with the notary or mayor at the time. He was both, I think, notary and mayor of Montreuil. A couple who was who had a great nephew with them. They were raising him. He actually was born in the north of France, but they were raising them, and he was just about my age, just 6 months older than I. Guy.
What was the last name?
Guy Fournier. And he went to school also with me, but he was with the boys, near the girls' classrooms.
And do you know anything about your kind of parents' sort of political outlooks, who they might have voted for, the way they thought about the world in that sense?
Oh, I would think they were very progressive. Very, very much on the left, the 2 of them. So I was born in the Front Populaire with Léon Blum in 36. I'm sure they agreed very much with the politics of the time. Yeah.
Do you know if they had any sort of feelings one way or the other about Zionism?
No, I don't. I don't at the time.
And you'd mentioned, I think you'd mentioned, maybe I misunderstood, that that they were quite secular.
Yes.
What was in what ways did they observe Judaism, or were they culturally Jewish?
No, they didn't really, from what I remember, we didn't observe at all. My father, my dad particularly, was quite influenced by a German philosopher, Konstantin Brunner, and he remained very close to Brunner in a way. And my dad, once he left home to study, was never religious at all. He did not. He was not a believer. Absolutely not.
And what do you know about this German philosopher and his ideas?
This was a Jew actually, but he was. I haven't really read him because it's all in German, and I would not talk. I don't really want to talk about it because I don't know enough about it.
And your mother, where would she have?
My mother, from what I remember, I think she was. I don't remember that much of her, unfortunately. I would think that she was also rather progressive because she grew up in a very secular home.
In terms of sort of high holidays and things, would those have been things that would have been noted?
No, I did not know I was Jewish. I did not know. Absolutely not. I had never heard anything about the Jews, about anything. I did not know I was Jewish. It's well after the war that I learned that I was Jewish. I did not know. I grew up going to school and the other children and nothing else.
Would there have been a Christmas tree in your own home or celebration of Christmas?
No, this was in a friend. This was in a friend's. Is the friends of my parents, where I had spent. So they probably had. They might not have been. I don't know. But from what I remember, there was no sign of Jews. Absolutely nothing.
Do you know if you, in those early years, if you or your parents were ever treated differently because you were Jewish?
In the village, I don't think so. No, I think people. My dad was very well liked. I think, as a doctor, as a human being, and my mother too. I think people have good memories of them. No, we were never. There was never a bad word. Mm-mm.
And you mentioned going to school. What can you tell me about that?
I went to school. Of course, I probably didn't start school until I was 5 or 5 maybe. I don't know. But I was in school in 42.
Yeah. And so probably, was there a kindergarten or anything like that before?
No. Mm-mm. And in the village there was no, no kindergarten, no, nothing, no, I don't think. Maybe 5, possibly.
And you talked a lot about your father's and his role as a doctor in the community. What did your mother do?
My mother was helping him, and I think helping him a lot. They both knew French. They had learned French in Romania, so that they were able to be in this small village. Of course, they were foreigners, so I suppose I mean, I think everything was going well, but I suppose some were probably didn't care as much for foreigners. But no, things were going well. No, I think so. And I laugh when I see the pictures of her with a duck. This was not the way she had been brought up.
Do you know, sort of, again, you may not know, but did you or in the family, was there an interest in art or music or sport particularly?
Yes. One of my cousins was a violin player in a symphony orchestra in Bucharest. Otherwise, not. Was the only one really.
And were there others in the family who became doctors, like your father?
No. They were lawyers. There was one lawyer. One brother of my mother who became a lawyer in Israel.
And going back to the school for a moment, and obviously this would have been 41, 42, those kind of times, so during the war already, but what are your memories of the school before the deportation started? Do you have any sense of school life? Any pictures in your head of what that was like?
Yeah, I'm going to school with his friends. Otherwise, nothing special that I remember. I don't remember the teacher. No, I remember. No, but that was more after the war. No, I don't remember.
Thinking a village of 600 people, would a school for that size of village have been, one room, two rooms?
One room.
One room.
From what I remember, right. But we were separated from the boys were. No, I remember. What do I remember? During the recess, playing with the stone, doing square and chalks, and pushing the little snow. That's what I remember. But I don't remember the teacher. I remember we were sitting two near each other, 2 by 2. I remember writing with ink, always having ink on the fingers. That's about all.
And was there a uniform? Did you have to dress a certain
No, there was not a uniform, but we all wore what you would call some kind of apron, I don't know, covering, but with long sleeve, a nice, colorful piece of cloth covering our clothes, to protect our clothes, really. Yeah. And I don't know what the boys were. So the boys must have had probably the same thing, but with a dark color. But the girls had always a colorful, piece of cloth, really.
And at that time, do you remember, in those early years, again, anything you remember really, but do you remember any kind of trips or journeys outside of Montreuil?
No. From the pictures, I see that I was taken, in 1939 on the Loire Valley near the castle. So I have a picture, but I don't remember No.
Other than school that you've mentioned, any other sort of pictures from around about that time of the town, of the way local, park or where you used to play?
There was no park because there was a lot of area where you could play, and I probably played in the garden in front of the house.
Because it was a small village, or I don't know if it's a small village, but a village. Did your parents kind of just let you play freely, or were they quite?
I don't remember playing free. No, I remember in the garden in front of the house. Right in front of the house. I don't remember any other way.
And what food did you eat at home? Any memories?
I cannot tell you anything. I don't remember that.
You told me about the ducks and chickens.
Well, yeah, so probably we were eating the chickens and the ducks, but I don't really remember. No.
And other than your parents, do you have a sense of any sort of people who were important or influential in your life at that time?
Well, later on, yes, but from before, no, just my mom and dad.
And would you say that there was a time, before your parents' deportation, were you aware of any changes going on? I mean, were you aware of the German occupation?
Not the German occupation, but the fact that my dad had to leave the house, we had to leave the house of the doctor and move to, thanks to some friends or some nice people, we let us have a house on a hill. And then I knew something was different.
What do you remember about?
And I remember, for some reason, the car being full, packing the car and things like that. And the house we moved to had a goat. There was a goat there. So that I remember a little bit, the goat. But I remember because I see the pictures also. And my dad and mom took a lot of pictures at the time. So it's a treasure looking at the pictures, and that helps me remember a little bit.
And what do you know, whose house was this? What do you know about this?
That I don't know. There was a factory in town of rubber boots. And I think this is the people that because it was across the factory, I think these are the people who let us have this small house on the hill for a while, actually. But it was, I don't remember the interior, but it was on a hill, grass, and that's why there was a goat. And then we had to leave the house after a while anyway. We could not stay.
And the journey from your home to this house, were you as a child given any kind of explanation of why?
No. No, when we moved, I was only 4, 1940. No, never. My parents never told me anything about protection. Protect your child.
And what did you come to understand later was the reason that you had to leave?
I don't think I questioned at the time. I didn't question.
But I mean, after the war, what did you understand?
Well, after the war, then I learned that it was the government, the Vichy government had decided that the Jews could not do anything they wanted. And my dad, that's why my dad was removed from the house, from practicing the medicine. And that I understood.
And how long were you in this second house, the house on the hill?
I don't know. I couldn't really. Well, probably a short time. I don't know. I mean, this was between 40 and 42, so we didn't stay there that long. And then we ended up in the mailman in town let us have a room. And this was when my parents were arrested. And they were arrested, not by the Germans, arrested by the French police, whom my dad knew very well. As a doctor, he had treated them or the family. But again, they were probably, quote, following orders from the prefect, from the department. And, he tried to ask them to give him some time. And actually, they returned, maybe they gave him 24 hours, and returned, and that was that. You had to come.
Do you remember?
No, I do. I was in school. No, and but I was there. No, I was not there when they actually arrested them. But they told me that they had to go to Romania to take care of my grandparents. I never knew. Nobody told me exactly at the time. So I was not there on the moment that arrest. I was in school. But I knew before that they had to go to Romania. And I accepted that, of course. So I never knew. I did not know at the time.
Was your father able to say goodbye to you?
No.
And were your parents arrested together?
Yes.
While you were at school?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened?
Their friends, the notary, I guess my parents asked them to take care of me, to take care of me. And I went to live with them. And I continued going to school. They were Catholic, so they were going to church on Sunday. I was going to church with them. Just continue my life, and of course hoping my parents would return rapidly. But I was in school, I was, They were very sweet to me and protected me, and I was like a normal little girl. I mean, really knowing nothing about Germans, about Jews, about nothing, absolutely nothing.
And what was the name of the people that
Hervieux.
And any special memories of them at that time?
Yes, because, then after the war, in the 50s, they moved to Rouen because Guy, their great-nephew, had to go to school, a secondary school, and it was only elementary school in the village. So they moved to Rouen, and I went to visit them a few times, actually. Well after, even in the 50s.
And the Hervieux family, was it just a couple, or were there children?
No, it was just a couple. They didn't have any children. No, just a couple. And they had been living in the village and thing for a long time, I think. But they were very, very nice people.
And how long did this period of staying with them and going to school last?
1 year, from 42, 43, I was with them. And in 43, October, 22nd of October, the Gestapo came to arrest me.
So not the local police?
No, because they must have known that there was still a child there to be arrested. And actually, they arrested a number of people in this particular date or the day before or on the day after in the department.
Of the Jews or?
Of the Jews.
Just Jews?
Yes, yeah. They had arrested, they were and actually the Gestapo came to get me in school. They didn't come to the school, but they came to the house of the Hervieux. And Madame Hervieux came to get me in school. But on the way, so I was with them sitting in the car, too, in the back of at the time there used to be, I think it was Citroën, a black car, which we used to call in French, traction avant. Very popular car, particularly for official thing. And on the way to Évreux, where I was in jail there, they stopped at another place in a farm where they were also looking for a child, I believe, who was not there. So they were arresting a number of people the particular days, which I learned later on, reading about the department.
And what did they look like, these people that arrested you?
They in uniform. Really. What I remember, of course, I was a child, tall, but a uniform. And they asked Madame Hervieux to prepare a little suitcase with some clothes and some food, I think. And they drove me to Évreux, the biggest city in the department, to the jail, and put me in a cell with an elderly lady whom I was frightened. I had never seen elderly people, and it was probably a traumatized person, arrested like me. And I had an ear infection, I remember at the time. And the couple, the lady, Mr. and Mrs. Hervieux, did their most to get me out of there, because he was an official, so he had an official from a small town, from a village, didn't really help that much, but they did everything possible. They tried, and they came to see me, and I stayed there about 3 days. And then they put me in a bus with other children. I was with other children. And we went to Drancy.
Just before we go on that part of the journey, when the Gestapo arrested you in Montreuil, was there any explanation of what they were doing, where you were going, like why you had to be taken?
To me, I don't remember. No. They might have said something to the Hervieux, but to me, no. I remember at least they gave me an apple in the car, but I had no idea where I was going. Nothing. I didn't know I was Jewish, so I'm sure at the time I didn't know. I don't.
And how did that make you feel? Do you remember?
No, I do not remember, because at the time I think the children were quite different from the children now, and they were quite, obedient, disciplined, not asking a lot of questions. So I don't remember how I felt at the time. I'm sure I was in the school, so she came to get me in school. I remember it was a rainy day, and she used to wear the big cape. And she put me under the cape to protect me from the... But, when I went back to Montreuil a few years ago, with the reporter who taped my dad, he knew everybody around because he was a reporter for the French newspaper covering the western part of France. And we went to a family, and the man said, "Oh yeah, I remember when you were arrested. I remember you were," So the children, he made some impression on the children at the time. Well, a little friend who was arrested for what reason. But I cannot tell you what I felt, because it was just overwhelming. I don't really. And Drancy was my savior. When I arrived in Drancy...
And how did you get there?
By bus. I think, with the other people, with the other children. I was with other children.
Not with the old lady?
I don't remember. Probably with other people.
And in Evreux, in the prison there, how many people were in the cell, I guess, with you?
No, just this lady.
Just this lady.
Right. Just this lady. So I remember them coming to see me. But I don't remember people around. And my ears I was suffering from my ear infection. There were a lot of things going on. And I never opened a suitcase. I didn't eat. There was food in it. And when we arrived in Drancy, whom I used to call Marraine, which is godmother in English, she remained Marraine, was there to take care of all the children who were arriving. I was not the first one. And there were always the women in the camp who were there to help the children, even younger than I. And she saw me I must have been looking desperate. And for some reason, put me aside and decided she was going to take care of me, but really take care of me, not put me with the other children. And that day she saved my life. And this is why I want to honor her. Mariette Hitlin. And she thought I was dirty, so she brought me in a block 3 where we lived and washed me. That was the first thing. She brought me in a room where there were a lot of bunk beds and a lot of other women, and put me in front of a sink, and that I remember clearly. Scrubbed me. She thought I was dirty. And after that moment, she loved me, protected me from the bad things. So I was really very protected. She was very loving, and her husband too. Very loving, and I was able to stay with them. And I cannot believe of the luck of the day, of the moment I had. And on my, which I'll show you later, on my camp file, which shows my name and birth, I had every one was marked if you were going to be exterminated quickly or later. And they used to put a B if you were going to depart for Auschwitz a little later, or if you had a chance to remain a little longer. So you went from B, and you will see on my file, B to C. So C, I could leave, but maybe a little later. And I started being in a room with other women, and her, always my protection. She was there, always, always loving me, and this helped because I had a beginning of I fell down one day, and I couldn't use my left leg. And I had the beginning of a polio, and this must have been really difficult for her because I was contagious. I'm sure the German didn't like the fact that I had to move to a room with her, come separated from everybody. But she took care, brought me to the infirmary, put my legs in very hot water, did all these things for me. All these things. And this is how we survived. And in 43, when we thought the Germans left, about August 44, about the 16, 17, they left, they took hostages. We didn't know if we were about more than 1,000 left still in a camp. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen to us, probably gone to direction Auschwitz. The rail strike occurred, so there were no wagons, no trains available to take us to Auschwitz. The Red Cross arrived on the 18th of August, 1944, and we were liberated by luck, by the French rail strike. Otherwise, we would have taken the same direction as my parents.
Going back to when you arrived in Drancy, you explained that Mariette was able to pick you out and rescue you. What was her role in the camp that allowed her to do that?
She was she was a prisoner like everybody else, but she was with a number of other women in charge of, when the people arrived, help them, especially the children. And she had not been doing it for a long time because she was arrested in July 43 and had gone to a French camp, Bonne-la-Rolande, before arriving in Drancy. She was arrested from Vichy, actually, where the family had a farm. The family had to leave Lorraine, Alsace, and had a farm in Vichy, or outside Vichy, and they were living there. So she was arrested in Vichy in July 43. So she had only been there for 2 months in Drancy before I arrived.
And was she Jewish?
She was Jewish, and her husband was Jewish, yeah. Mm-hmm. Jewish family. He was from Metz. She was from Strasbourg. Jewish family.
Would she also have spoken German?
She was speaking German, and he was speaking German. Mm-hmm.
And do you know what it took to assign you the C rather than the B?
She told me later on, she never wanted to talk to me about Drancy. I had a lot of questions about Drancy. We never spoke about what she couldn't talk about, especially to me. No, I think she told me that she asked a German, excuse me, that day, and he said yes, that she could take that child with her. That he said yes, but I don't know exactly. Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry.
Please.
Once in a while.
No, please, anytime. I just took a Ricola because I was feeling a cough coming on. And you mentioned Block 3.
Yes.
Was that the block you were in?
Yeah, the Block 3 had a lot of French Jews, actually. And probably also, if you had a Jewish whose spouse was not Jewish, you had this, marriage. And but it was mostly French Jews.
Were there other children there?
I think they were, I don't remember, but I think there were other children there too, I believe. Maybe older than I, yeah. They were, but I don't remember, of my age, I don't remember. They were probably. I was very protected there. I mean, I was very close to her.
And what did you wear in the camp?
I was wearing a star on my clothes, but I was wearing my normal clothes. We were allowed to receive a package, and one time, and I wrote to the Hervieux in Montreuil. And that I was taken care of by Marraine, thing. And on that piece of paper, she wrote very small, I remember, pencil, which I have, of course, that she's taking care of me, that everything is fine, not to say a word about it, not make it official, nothing, don't say a word about it, but send a package with some of her clothes that she needs. So they knew that I was in the camp, I was not in Auschwitz, and I was being protected, and so they knew. Because in the meantime, Monsieur Hervieux was writing to the prefect, was writing to the Union of of France, trying to find out where I was all the time. And I have actually, each time he wrote he made copies of it. And I have all the copies of his letters, trying to find out first about my parents and then about me, where I was, what happened to me, and things. So they knew that I was safe, and okay, because my parents, when they were in Drancy, at the beginning, you were allowed to send small letters or something, or the French police outside the camp. You could give them a letter to give to the family. And I have 3 or 4 small letters written in pencil, piece of paper like this. My parents writing, please hide my daughter. No, actually, they didn't even want to say the daughter. So they wrote the Hervieux that I was their niece, Evelyn. They didn't want to write about them. Please put her in a convent or in an orphanage or someplace. Don't keep her, push her, hide her, because I was not hidden in a village, was going to school, to church. Please, make her go someplace. Repeatedly, in these few messages from the mid-October, my parents said about nearly 3 weeks in Drancy. And they did not, I guess it was very difficult, so they had me. So when they read Mariette's little message that I was alive there, they were happy. But my parents just, until the last minute, wanted me out of their house and hidden, really hidden.
Were they ever able to, the Hervieux, were they able to get you any letters or packages back to you?
Yeah, they sent a package with some clothes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
And the yellow star that you wore in Drancy, was it in the form of an armband or sewed onto clothing?
So, I will show it to you. Yeah, it was supposed to be always on the left of the clothes.
And what was the Bureau des Effectifs?
Well, it was like the administration. All the prisoners had to be employed with something. There was everybody. I mean, even my in the small letters of my dad and mom, they write about they had to go and peel the potatoes and do. Everybody was doing something. So, because they knew the German you know. So they were employed, part of the administration, for the arrival, writing the name and the file, the card, and everything. And all this was men and women, all prisoners. Because the camp, you know, when the atmosphere changed a little bit, I think, when Louis Brunner came in 43, before you had more French police really inside the camp, I had the feeling. And when he came, I think it was much more than the German influence. On top of that, I think he was more determined to exterminate everybody after he had been in Salonika
And did you have a sense of that change?
No. I was so protected that I did not see the preparation for the deportation. All this, I did not see.
And what do you remember of your days? And what?
You know, I remember being with Marraine a lot. And she taught me how to read time, for instance. I mean, she read with me. She did a lot of things with me of my age. And she gave me a lot of love and affection all the time. And that's what I didn't see. Anything what was really happening, all the bad things. You know, she became like a mother. I mean, she became like, and she stayed until her death. A mother, absolutely, a mother.
So during the days, were you with her in the home?
What I remember, I was with her, yeah. And I had the polio, and I was in infirmary, and I was in room with her. But I have small memories, for instance, my husband, which I've called Parrain, knocking at the window at night when I was in bed, and he called me Nini Bleu because I was dressed in blue a lot. She called me Niquette. He called me Nini Bleu, knocking at the window of the room and, sending me a kiss and wishing me good night. And they were not my dad and mom, but you just need loving people to replace.
Taking a step back, the years, so you would have been sort of almost 2 years in Drancy. No, 1 year?
No, 1 year. 10 months.
August.
From October 43 to August 1844. So 10 months.
What do you remember of the way Drancy looked? Do you have sort of a visual memory of the buildings?
Yeah. Like a U. So there was one block, the end. Block 3, we were at the end, and another block, just like a U. We were block 3, yeah, at the end.
And what was in the middle?
It was a courtyard. cemented. Now there are trees there. Have you ever been to Drancy?
No.
No, you haven't been. You know who lives in Drancy now? It's occupied. It is occupied. Drancy was a 4-story home. And there used to be skyscrapers when it was built in the 30s. There were skyscrapers, and at the time, it was the policemen, the gendarmes, who were housed there. They removed the skyscrapers. Actually, the Germans were living in the skyscrapers at the time. They removed the skyscrapers, and now it's a more loyer modéré. A lot of immigrants to France who are living now there. So it's occupied. There is now an elementary school near it. It has deteriorated a lot. But the structures have remained exactly, and now there are trees in the middle. Before it was just a courtyard where the prisoners could be out a bit and were walking around. Now it's occupied, really. And we walked, my son and I, we walked inside because there was, the staircase, and he needs work, definitely. But this is the town. The town of Drancy, is responsible for the housing.
Is there any kind of indication of its history?
That it is being worked?
No, in the structure, is there any sort of signage to say this was the Drancy?
Yeah. There is a monument in front, a big monument, which was built in early 70s, I believe. Right, and then there, no. So we know that it is what it has been.
So at the time it was used as a camp, it was actually a fairly new building.
Yeah, it had been, yes, but it hadn't been occupied. So it had been occupied a little bit. Well, it started in 41, I think, when they arrested a number of people already in 41. Before it has, no, it hadn't really been completed. No, it was not occupied.
And you were saying the Germans occupied the upper floors?
They occupied the skyscrapers outside. Outside. But, it's part of the town. So in front, there is a big street which existed before. And so the people from town knew everything going on. They saw the arrivals. And now there's a museum, actually. There's a museum right in front, explaining a little bit the history. And it's good, but otherwise the structure has remained, and it's and the block, the people who were going to be deported, were on the first or the second building. The first, mostly.
And you mentioned the changing atmosphere when there was a change of the authorities.
I think when I remember, the bit I remember is more whistle things, and you know, I had the feeling. But I don't really remember exactly.
You mentioned that there's the street outside and that the locals would have,
Right.
they've certainly been aware of this camp. And you mentioned that there had been, French local police.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what, if any, contact there was with either the local policemen and or local people? Was there any kind of, from
Yeah, I
the
don't.
inside to the outside?
No, I think, for instance, some of the letters, I think at the beginning, my parents, all the people who were prisoners there, could send maybe a letter a week or send a message. But I have the feeling these pieces of paper that I have, small letters from my parents, this was not official. This was given to a policeman. This was not an official card. Or, So I think the people, I don't know, the people across, I couldn't tell you much about. The only thing I think about when looking at these little pieces of paper, torn little, it was not a proper letter. This was given to a nice gendarme, actually, the state trooper. It was more the state trooper, the gendarme, what we call, and who sent it to the Hervieux, I think.
In Drancy, were there windows looking out?
Yes, there were windows looking out, but there was a, I don't remember, but they were, I don't remember it. But definitely, because they put a wall, so you had no access. For instance, we were on the block 3, we would have had access to the back, and no, I don't remember because there was corridor. And last time my son and I, we walked through the back like we hadn't done before, and I realized that there was a wall. The people couldn't see in the back. You couldn't see the people who lived in Drancy. No, you couldn't. They had blocked out. No, otherwise it would have been, it must have been barbed wire too. They were barbed wire in the front. Actually, now they put, you were asking me about Drancy. They put a monument in the 60s or beginning 70s, but now they put a wagon also in front. But nobody left from Drancy in his wagons. They left from Bobigny, and first they left from Le Bourget. But so they had to be bussed, and Bobigny was the place where they sent them. But they wanted to show, so they put a wagon.
Were you aware of the arrival and comings and goings of these buses?
Yes, I was. No.
So, Mariette is as part of her job, she was involved in, would have seen people coming in on a...
She would have seen people coming in because she, particularly with the children, you know. So probably she was not with me every minute of the day, you know. But I don't really remember. For me, I remember being always with her, you know. But she was involved with other children and families. Yeah.
And do you know what she did with them?
Well, you had to, you know, first put the name, for some who remember the name and their birth, and fill that file to show that you had been in there. And this is what the Shoah Museum, the Shoah Memorial in Paris. I didn't have my file, you know, I didn't have it. But this, we went and asked, and now recently, a few years ago actually, and now I can show it. I didn't have it before. And you had, of course, you had to, you know, give your name and birth and where you came from and your nationality and all that.
And was each file, I mean, you'll show it to us so we can look. But
Yeah.
Was it signed, each one?
No, we
Just-
didn't sign it. It was name, birth, where you lived, your nationality. That's all. No, you didn't sign anything. No. And then, right away, fortunately, then it was decided, but if you were like my parents, I mean, I have the file of my parents also.
And do you know who did the decision about?
No, I don't. That came from the German, you know, right, the German administration.
And what do you know about Mariette from before the war, who she was and her family?
Yeah, Mariette was born in Strasbourg in 1913, 11th of November, 1913. And she was a only child. She grew up very happily. Left for a few years when her father didn't want to join the Germans because this was outside. They left a little bit to live in Switzerland. Came back, did all her schooling in Strasbourg, was very happy. I know exactly where she lived. Where she played with in the park with her dolls. We go every year. Married. Her father was a salesman in a textile company. Married Georges, who was a lawyer in Metz. Came to live very young, married in 34. She was 21. She married in Metz. Came to live in Metz, which was quite different from Strasbourg. And you had his family were owned, they're all grown up in Metz. Everybody pretty much lived on the same street, Avenue Foch. But everything was going well, so she had, you know, a new family right away. Came 39. They were arrested. They decided. Sorry, they decided to go Vichy, of course, to go to their farm in Vichy. They had to leave Alsace, and then was arrested. Also, at because they had hidden a member of the resistance, but of course they were arrested like, they're Jews too. But probably they shouldn't have had a member of the resistance in their farm. But and was in Bonne-la-Rolande also, in a camp just before Georges. Georges arrived in Drancy a few weeks before her, and then she arrived. But she had a very happy childhood, and she talked about it, how she was an only child and everything was going well, and I have even, she kept every piece of letter and thing. And I have, when I go to Paris, I read all the letters she wrote to her parents in the early 30s, at the beginning of their marriage. She was writing, you know, she didn't speak on the phone. Of course, she wrote every day. I have the letter. She kept everything, you know, and her mother, of course, kept everything. And her mother, I didn't talk about her mother. Her mother was lucky. She was not arrested. She went, probably she had lost her husband in 1937. She lived in Paris at the time. She went to Haute-Savoie. You see, you know what I mean? And spent the war years over there. So her mother...
In hiding? Or?
Kind of in hiding, yeah, living in the family, you know. And so survived the war, nicely. And after, when we came out of Drancy, we stayed with some family of Georges a little bit in Paris, but then we went to the apartment where her mother was living, had been living, but, you know.
They were able to get the apartment back? It wasn't occupied?
The apartment had been empty, all the furniture was gone, but they were able to get the apartment at the beginning back, yeah, right.
And what was Mariette's mother's name?
Jeanne Valac.
Valac was her maiden name?
No. Valac was her last name. And she was a pianist, actually. She played the piano very well. No, her maiden name was Dreyfus. Jeanne Dreyfus.
And Mariette's father?
Mariette's father was René Valac. So she was, Mariette was extremely close to her parents, and extremely close because her father died. She was quite young, and the mother remained a widow. She took care of her mother until her mother died in 1978. But her mother lived in Neuilly, right in the suburbs of Paris. So she was there all the time taking care of her mother. And till the last minute, she was extremely close to her mother.
Now, can you talk a little bit about Georges Etland?
Yeah, Georges was born in Metz in 1904 and became a lawyer and was a lawyer at the time, you know. They married. His his father and his two brothers also were involved, had a wholesale dairy kind of, selling milk and all kinds of stuff in Metz. And then his two brothers were working also with the father in the dairy. So Georges was the only lawyer in the family, and he was the youngest child. And so these two brothers were living in Metz. His sister married also in Metz. So this was really thing. And I remember after the war, when I was with the two of them and we traveled to Metz, we were always traveling to see the family. For a special occasion, we were always in Metz. And Mariette also had family on the Valac side in Switzerland, in Basel. She had cousins there, uncle, whom I didn't met, who had already passed away, but met the cousins. So she also liked to go back to Basel and see the family, or they came to Paris to see them. What she called my petit cousin, because they were a little younger than her.
Let's go back for a moment to the end of your time in Drancy. What do you remember about the last days in the camp? You started to talk about it, but I'd like to hear
Yeah,
more.
right. I remember everybody was happy, because we were liberated, and when we learned that we couldn't travel by train when there was no train, and then we went. Yeah, but remember, Paris was not liberated yet. Paris was liberated, I think, on the 25th. So when we went to stay with some cousins of Georges, they were still bombing, they were still in Paris. And I do remember staying with them, and Georges would not go down to the cellar. People went to the cellar. And Georges said, no, we are not going in the cellar when the bombing. We're staying. And I remember being in the bed with them and hearing noise. But we didn't go to the cellar. For some reason, he didn't want to go to the cellar. That I remember. And I remember the bombing in the Bourget also. That I remember in the camp. When the Allies were bombing the Bourget.
What do you remember of that?
No, I remember seeing a lot of lights and, we were very close to the Bourget. A lot of noise and lights and terrible noise. That I do remember. I cannot tell you at the date or what, but I remember that.
As an 8-year-old, having lost your parents, how did that feel at that time? See that?
Well, what I had with these loving people around me all the time, so I knew my parents were not there, but I didn't really ask. No, in one of my letters, and I said something about to them later, and Maman hasn't come back yet, after my father came back. But I was so loved and so protected and so loved from them, from morning to night. I mean, that I was not thinking, frankly, where is my dad, where is my mom? later on when my mother didn't come back, when my father came, that was more difficult. But again, this was love, 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 affection, affection, affection.
It just occurred to me a question about Delancey. When you were in Delancey, did you have, I mean, you've explained that they were protecting you and kind of keeping you to the side of things, but did you have occasions when you interacted with the Germans there?
No, one time, no, one time, yeah. When I was diagnosed with polio, and well, the beginning of polio, fortunately, it didn't happen. And I was in a room completely in, what do you say in English, in quarantine, completely, with her. And I remember German opening the door, and Mariette said something, and then he closed the door, and I think there was a sign on the door that I was there, And I must say, they could have decided I was trouble. I was trouble. They could have decided. But that I remember. But otherwise, no.
Were there doctors there examining you? Or?
Yeah, they were sure. In the infirmary, there was a Jewish doctor who survived, actually, and wrote a medical certificate about me, after the war.
Do you know his name?
Oh, he was a Dreyfus. I think it was Bernard. I think it was Bernard Dreyfus. No, he was a prisoner, but he was in an infirmary.
No connection to Mariette's?
No.
Mother's family?
No.
Okay.
No connection at all. No. No, but actually, one of Georges' brother and his wife were also in Drancy. Were arrested. I don't know his older brother, not the oldest, but one of his brother. But I don't know enough about what they did in Drancy. I mean, they were employed, but I don't know what they did. And I don't remember them in Drancy either, but they were there too.
And again, the last day or two in Drancy itself, in the camp itself, did the Germans leave? Did you see Allied soldiers arriving? What
No. The Germans left, and they took some hostages. They took, I think, 50 hostages. No, we didn't see. No, it was the Red Cross who came to liberate us. No, it was not the Allied. No. It was the Red Cross.
What did that look like?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Did you have any interaction with any Allied soldiers?
No.
You just stayed away?
I didn't. No, we didn't see them. We didn't see them in Drancy. No, it was the Red Cross, and I think was involved the consul of Sweden, Nordling, I think was involved also in our liberation. No, otherwise.
And after that, where did you go?
After that, after staying a few days with a cousin of Georges, we went to the apartment of Mariette's mother. And I will show you a picture.
Which arrondissement?
No, in Neuilly.
In Neuilly, oh, that's
Right in the suburbs of Paris. And we stayed there, but the Hervieux wanted me back in Montreuil. They wanted me back in school. And at the time, French school started October 1st. All the French schools started October 1st. And so there wasn't that much time. I stayed a little bit with them, and then I was back in Montreuil. living with them, going back to school, going back to church, until my dad. But during the school vacation, I always went to Paris to spend with Mariette and Georges. And the people who let us have the house, the people who own that factory, rubber factory, they had a store in Paris selling their rubber boots. So I could go with them in a car, or myself with them, to Paris. In the meantime, Mariette and Georges were renting another apartment in Paris itself, in the 7th arrondissement. And so for the vacation, I was always with them. But Mariette was always the Hotel Lutetia in Paris, had all the people who returned, and she was always aware of checking the list of people who returned. And one day she saw that Luc had returned, and she called, and he came to the apartment, and he said, I have a daughter. Well, no, he knew. No, he was hoping he had a daughter before, because he had a time. But he saw his little daughter,
Do you remember?
and I saw my dad, yeah.
What do you remember of that?
Oh, I mean, I remember sitting on his lap, and I don't know if I was crying or if I was, but he came with a friend who had been a little bit on the march with. It was just, but it was not until after he was freed. He spent time, my dad, he spent time in Birkenau, but he spent time also in another camp, sub-camp, Yavozhno and things. So he was very lucky, because instead of going on the long march, a little bit at Blechhammer, he stopped and he went to hide in Blechhammer. In the infirmary, he found a bed vacant. He went to hide. And this is what saved him too. And Blechhammer was liberated just maybe a little bit after Birkenau. So that's what also saved him. But what saved him, he was German speaker, and he was a doctor, and he could work not right away. At the beginning, it was very difficult. He was working in ditches and things. And after, this was November 42, after that he realized that he wouldn't survive, being in the cold and the winter. And he managed to be in infirmary, working as a prisoner, helping the other prisoners in Yavozhno. And he helped Dr. Heller, who was also Jew, who was also helping the prisoner, because there was a mine nearby, so he had to try to keep them alive. So he was actually freed from. The only thing I don't know is that if every night he had back to Birkenau, if he stayed in Yavozhno, don't know this detail. But he managed to survive and, was liberated among 4 of this convoy of 1,000 people. And what really helped him, I think, and he says in his interview also, that he was speaking German, that he knew what was going on around. And my mother, who was already a bit physically ill, I know, mentally and psychologically, you know, and they write about all my father says in his interview. The most difficult thing was leaving their child. What's going to happen to your child if you have a child? You think about your child, right? What was going to happen to your child? In an interview, that's what it says. What's going to happen to our child? And so after Yavozhno, the Russians took them to Odessa. They stayed in Odessa for a while, and I found a book. He was trying to learn Russian. He was always interested in languages, so he was trying to learn Russian. And after Odessa, they sent them for a while. He was in France, like recuperating, before brought back to Paris. So I didn't see him until July 45, actually. But he had written a little card, a postal card, which was official then, that he was alive from Bleshhammer. He managed to send a little card. Oh no, that wasn't Bleshhammer, that was from Berdichev. Actually, he sent from Berdichev. He sent a card that he was alive and in good health. And
To the Elvieu or to who?
sorry?
Who did he send
To
that
the
card?
Elvieu, to the Elvieu. Yeah, to the Elvieu.
Did he ever explain that, you know, in Yavozhno, like, what he was able to do to help prisoners?
Yeah, he says that, of course, there was a lack of drug, but he managed to get some drugs. They managed to get some drugs and help the people, definitely. Yeah. But he didn't give, even in an interview, he remembers names, you know. He doesn't say much about exactly. But because he tries to, the reporter asked him a few questions, but so he tries to talk about different things. And he remembered this one and that one was bad. And, you know, the interview is in French, but it probably, I wonder if it has been even translated in English, I don't know, because it's in a museum in Caen where a number of people go, you know, when they go and visit the beaches. And, probably it's in English.
And what do you know about what happened to your mother?
I think my mother did not survive long. No, I don't really know. But she did not, no, because she was, from the little bit of the letters, I know she was very distraught, very. So, and my dad, I think, also had the feeling she didn't survive long, you know. She was very young. She was only 34.
Did he go through the selection with her at Birkenau?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she went to the camp rather than to the gas chamber? Do you know? Or?
I don't know exactly.
Coming back to when your father came back and you're sitting on his knee. Tell us about that. And
Well, that was just fantastic for me. But then it was difficult for him because he had to start zero. He didn't have, he knew he couldn't. I mean, he tried. He went back to Montreuil, tried, but there was another doctor there, of course. Tried, above a cafe, there was one room. I remember, tried to see a few patients and things, but he realized that thing. No. And no, and I think the atmosphere was quite different. I have the feeling.
In what way?
Well, no, the other day I was reading a letter that he was writing to Mariette that I just came aware of. And he was writing about the gratitude and to her and all that. But I think I had the feeling, I think the people maybe they have the sense of guilt or something. I don't know. I mean, we're still the same people in Montreuil, where he had been very happy, but maybe they felt something, maybe that they could have done more. I don't.
Is that something that came through in one of his letters?
I don't know. Yeah, that letter. I had the feeling. And then I think he put his we can't call it uniform, but the striped thing one day in Montreuil. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. And then I think the mayor was not too happy about that, but I think maybe he wanted to show what he had gone through. I don't know. He had gone through a lot. And he realized but there was no future in Montreuil. He was another doctor, apparently. And then he started looking elsewhere, And then we went to a small town in Seine-et-Marne, south of Paris, until 1950. And then we went closer to Paris, but not in Paris, 1950, from 1950 until 60, till he retired in 65.
And how did your life kind of go in terms of...
No, and he remarried a woman originally from Poland, whose husband had been arrested in 43, who had a son and was raising her niece, who had been born in Germany, who had lost her family. And we did a happy family. Suddenly, I had a brother and a sister. And, and we went to live in that small town.
What was the
Gretz, Gretz, in Seine-et-Marne, until 1950. But the children were all kind of separated because my stepsister was in a boarding school. He was in a boarding school in Paris. I went to elementary school, but then there was no secondary school. I was in boarding school too, because there was no, So I didn't like boarding school. I wanted to be with I wanted to be with my parents. I wanted to, But then, in 1950, we moved closer to Paris. And then they finished up, they finished up their schooling. And they had finished their schooling already. And I was able to go to the lycée in Paris. Every day I could take the train. And
which one?
Oui, c'est ça, lycée. Non, Jules Ferry. Lycée. Lamartine. Lamartine. Not far from Gare de l'Est. I mean, that was easy. A girls' school at the time, what we call a lycée pour filles.
And you lived with your father and stepmother?
In Noisy-le-Sec, that was the Noisy-le-Sec. That was in the Seine department, I guess. That was closer to Paris. You know, you could take the bus or you could take the train, or you could take, that was much easier. Yeah, and I lived with them until 1959. No, then I went. I finished the baccalaureate. I went to 2 years of business school. Then I was working secretarial kind of administrative assistant in a pharmaceutical company. Then 59, my sister had a baby, and she invited me to New York to come and spend the summer in New York. And I said, okay. So I took the ship, nice, wonderful ship, the Flandre, and I met Thomas John, graduate student in history, and I spent the summer, and I saw quite a bit of him, and my parents were not too particularly happy, because there was already one. My sister had moved, was living in New York, had married an American, and here again was the second, daughter. So, okay, so we were married the following year, 1960, and in France, in Noisy-le-Sec, as a matter of fact. And then we went to the University of Rochester, where he got his PhD in history. And we came to London, did research. And then the first child was Caroline in 64, and the second was Tommy in 68. So they were very then happy. Yeah. And of course, I continued seeing Mariette and Georges all the time. They didn't come to the States, but, they were my children, the granddaughters. Everybody knew each other because we often went back to Paris. And so Mariette and Georges, especially Mariette, Georges died in 78, but Mariette saw the children and grandchildren, and Tommy, his recollection the first time he saw her, he was 3.5, and she sat on the floor and played with trucks with him, and so she remained beloved figure. And the children, when they talk about her, it's Marraine. Yeah. It's and this is why she should be remembered. Not so much that I was in Drancy, but she saved a life. She saved a life. And this is what the rabbi in Metz, at the cemetery, said. And he came when we were traveling to Metz. And I didn't know the rabbi in Metz, the one she was going to speak at the cemetery. And he said, what do you want me to talk about her? And I said all the things she had done, and this was what important. And he talked about that. How she was wonderful. She had saved a life. It was so important. And every time we go to France, go to the cemetery. And we go to Strasbourg. Every time. And we go in front of a lycée, And when she was born, in the park where she played with her dolls, she talked so much about every time. And we are going in October, as a matter of fact.
Where was she buried? In Strasbourg?
She's buried in Metz. She's buried with her husband in Metz, with the rest of the family. No, so we first go to Metz, and then we take the train to Strasbourg. But that's our first. And she would be so happy, because she wanted, you know, in a Jewish cemetery, which I didn't know, you cannot bring flowers or trees or, you know. I didn't know anything about that. But she wanted so badly to have, when George died in 1978, she wanted a weeping willow, because he liked weeping willows when they had their house. And she managed to have that small, a tree planted at the grave. And the tree now is enormous. It's too bad she's not there to see it. Absolutely enormous. So she would be happy. And she's buried with him near the other members of the Etlin family. His brothers, sister-in-law, and the parents, also his parents. So they are together.
Other than you as an honorary child, honorary daughter, did they have any children of their own?
No. No, and she suffered a lot from not having children. Yeah, I know, in their life, yeah, in their youth. Because she had, unfortunately, the member who expected a young bride of 21 at the time, you know, in a few years after, to have, this was 1930s, in the 30s, to have a child. So she unfortunately suffered a lot from it. Right.
I have a few other questions I'd like to ask before we move on to showing photographs.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yes.
You'd mentioned, you know, growing up, you really didn't know you were Jewish. When and how did that kind of awareness come to you?
Well, you know, I cannot tell you exactly. I don't really remember exactly. Because we're in Drancy, well, I was wearing a star, but, you know, I didn't know that I was Jewish. And the star was on my coat, but I didn't know. So, I mean, after the war, you know, but I don't remember, I can't really remember my father telling me anything about it. I must have, you know, I cannot tell you any particular moment when I heard, no. Because I was never, I knew let me see, I knew when I was in that boarding school, because there was another girl with me in a dorm, I remember, who was Jewish. And I had heard something. I don't know, but I think in boarding school, suddenly I realized there was something. I have no idea. But I don't remember my father telling me, but somebody told me.
And why did that?
No, but I didn't mean at the
Right.
time, No, because I was never told bad name about being Jewish. Never. I never heard a swearing, nothing of this. No, never. Not in Montreuil, not in Graz, no. In Graz they made fun of my red hair, in school. The boys, but not. No, I don't. I cannot tell you exactly. Don't know exactly.
And in what ways, if any, do you think your experience of the war, of being separated at such a young age from your parents, and then your time in Drancy and losing your mother, how's that impacted you? Did it change things, or how would you think about how it affected you through your life?
No, it affected me that no. What I am now, very so appreciative of is that I have a loving family, 2 wonderful children. The grandchildren are loving, and the great-grandchildren are already showing as long as they are. And, what makes me sorry is my mother never could see all that and appreciate all that. But I'm so thankful we have a wonderful family. And I am so happy to be a mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. I adore all these little ones, And yeah, I wish my mother would have. My dad too now, but he saw some of them. But now, at my age, yeah, I'm very appreciative of all the love that surrounds me. Very.
How many grandchildren and great-grandchildren do you have?
I have 2 granddaughters and a grandson. And I have 5 two great-grandson and 3 great-granddaughters now. Yeah, it's a pleasure. And it's a fantastic thing because their parents were both, the two granddaughters, were both married in 2017, so 6 years ago. And now they have 5 great out of these 2 granddaughters. So it's fantastic. Absolutely.
You mentioned to me earlier one of the great-grandchildren is very recent.
Yes. The little one, Kiki, is only, actually, Kiki is 12 days old. Right. I had never heard that name Kiki, but it is. And my husband would be very happy that one of the granddaughters is called Brooklyn because he grew up in Brooklyn. So he would be also, and he loves this Brooklyn, so he would be happy to have also a granddaughter called Brooklyn.
Did your father stay in France when you emigrated here? Did any other family members come with you?
No, except my stepsister. No, my father stayed in France. My father stayed in France. No, he was very happy in France. Although the French Vichy government had arrested him, but he was very bad. He continued being a doctor until 1965. And now, and in Noisy-le-Sec, they decided, when we were living, to destroy all the old houses and put the big tower. And so they had, all the people in that street had to leave. And they decided to go and live right in Paris, in the 15th arrondissement. And, it was nice for them to be in Paris. Finally, he liked music a lot, and so he was able to go to the concerts and.
I'm wondering, sort of changing subject a little bit, just sort of thinking about the world today and the contemporary situation in terms of politics, in terms of racism, in terms of anti-Semitism. How do you look at the world today? Do you, when you watch the news and think about things, how does it seem to you? Given your experiences of being particularly singled out as Jewish and treated in a different way, and in a for your mother, for having been targeted to be killed, and the same really for you and your father too. How do you look at the world today, and how does it feel?
Well, I worry a lot what's going to happen for the next generation. Yeah, absolutely. And and I think about the couple Karsfeld, we have been so good in showing really what happened. What's going to happen to the generation after? For them, it's the Middle Ages. It's already the Middle Ages for the Second World War, actually. So, I'm not, I hope everything goes. It's not going to be forgotten. But this genocide can happen any place, really, and it happened in Rwanda, and so we have to watch that it never happens again. Never. For anybody. No, absolutely not. And I think of my dad, although we couldn't have a radio, but when he was in the mailman, when they were in the mailman's house, I'm sure he was listening. And the BBC, so my dad, I'm sure, had the feeling that they were not going to easy work camps and idle things. No, we have to say never for anybody, never again.
And do you draw parallels when you hear about other experiences? Do you draw parallels between your experience and the treatment of other groups, or do you think of what you went through as being kind of something different? How do you sort of think about the Holocaust and?
Well, no, I think that Hitler wanted the extermination of the Jews. This was right from the beginning. So, completely remove the Jews from every place in the world. So this was not a question. the Vichy government, of course, didn't help the Vichy government. And it was sad, frankly, that you had to wait in France until 1995, and President Chirac actually taking some responsibility for the French government removing the Jews after all. Many were saved. It's true. The French lost less than some other countries. But without Maréchal Pétain and Laval, that could have been avoided. So people, human beings who are the cause of the problem.
What kinds of things do you think, we can do to help prevent or to lessen,
Well, we have to treat each other better, more respectfully. We have to treat each other normally. We can be friends with each other. Treat with respect. In a religion, you have to show respect. And accept with respect.
And for you, what significance is there, if any, about sharing your story today?
No, I want I want to share my story, if it's to be shared. That this lovely woman saved a life. So this was not a Catholic or a Muslim saving or hiding a Jew. This was a Jew saving another Jew in a camp. And and she did just something with honor, something. And nobody except I have ever talked about her. And this is the time, and I should probably have done it long ago, to remember her, Mariette Hitler. But I cannot put a plaque on the wall of a building, where she lived, but she saved me. She saved a life. Can we say? I cannot say that I saved a life. What? So I wonder how many, are responsible, have done this, and she should be honored. I cannot put a name in a stained window or, I cannot. I tried for years to try to think about something with their name. I wanted to do, she actually was quite talented in the theater. And I thought, maybe I can put her name on the seat of the Comédie Française or something, where she studied to become an actress. But you don't do that in France. You don't put, names on benches like we do here. So what can I put her name? But it's not just a name. I hope somebody hears that she saved a life. Yeah. And she deserves to be known.
Is there, before we show some photographs and see them, is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you that you'd like to talk about?
Let me think. No, there's nothing.
You can say during the photographs if there is. You can.
Right? No, that's fine.
And one last question. Do you have any message for future generations of people watching this testimony?
As I said before, be nice to other human beings. Be kind. Respect each other. Be kind. Right, be kind. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Let's take a short break to turn around and do the photographs. Thank you.
How was that?
That was amazing.
Was okay?
Yeah, really great.
But I'm glad you asked me the question because that made me.
I
you
just
know,
hope I wasn't badgering you too much.
No, not at all. No, I hope I gave you enough.
Oh
you
no,
know,
it's
stuff.
fascinating.
Right?
Really,
Okay. Because you never know when you start speaking. I said, you know,
Oh, it was
I've never
wonderful.
done something like that. I'm rather a reserved person. I'm not blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? I'm not. So,
Thank you for doing it finally. I know.
no,
You know,
I
it's not
really,
easy.
I really wanted to do something. You would have loved her. She's so, you know, friends of Tommy who came to see her, everybody just thought that she was marvelous because she really a lovely person. And because she was acting also, you know, she was an actress, not a professional actress, but with a literary salon, and she could speak and, you know, was very sociable and yeah. No, at the end she was the head of a literary group, you know, where they invited lecturers and musicians and singers, and she really, and she did not come from a acting family or actress family or, you know, at all. No, but she started herself, and she took classes with somebody from the Comédie Française. That's why I was thinking of the Comédie Française. And really, she was fantastical.
So let's talk to, I guess Tom's got the photos and we'll figure out
Yeah.
what we're showing and how it's gonna. Oops. Well, I'm still hooked up. Do I stay hooked up to this mic?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I won't move.
So then, I think what we should
Ah.
do.
Yeah.
I think you should stay there so you can still
You want me to
communicate,
sit?
so that you can still communicate.
Okay.
But let's put this on your lap.
Yeah.
And then what we'll do is, like, whenever you reference a photo,
Yes.
we'll put it here on this easel.
Do you want me to do the putting up, or how shall we? What's the best way?
Yeah, that might be good. Like if basically, yeah, if you're over here, so that
I've got enough length.
well, she
Okay.
might want to talk because I think you want her eye line to stay here. So maybe Bonnie.
Okay.
We can because so that she's still looking at you and communicating.
That works.
And then like we'll just put the stuff like right here is the ledge, Bonnie. So then just
Yeah.
basically set it
Okay.
here.
Are you going to end up in camera, Bob?
So-
Do we
No.
need to make you turn
I'll,
around?
I'll put it here.
Are you stopping
Get
starting?
away.
No, I'm gonna
Just
move
adjust it.
out of
Okay.
We'll
She
keep
won't
it
be in.
the same.
Okay.
So do you want to, just let me know.
What's that?
Do you want me to show it
Just
like that
start
to you?
talking, I guess.
No, I think what you're going to do, Nicole, is give it to Bonnie.
Yeah,
Okay.
Bonnie, why don't you
She's
take
going
all
to
of the
put
stuff.
it.
Oh, okay.
Take
got
all
it.
the
She's
stuff.
going to put it on the black screen, and they'll film it against the black.
I'll
here.
just take
You
all
want
of
it to? You
I'll
want-
take
Yeah,
all
we'll
of
take,
it.
Oh, okay.
all of that stuff.
And then as you want to talk about,
And we'll do it one by one, and you can.
Okay.
yes. So, would you like to
Are you filming her or are you filming?
It's going to be both. And I'll zoom in on the
Okay, great.
photograph and then
Okay.
pull out, and then so that it's kind of she's narrating what we're talking, what
Okay.
we're looking at it.
Great.
Do you want her, I mean, she can just talk about.
Well, this was
But we're going to need to see it against the black.
I don't
right?
know how it'll stay out. Let's see. Oh, yeah.
this was
Okay. So let
Okay.
us know when we're rolling.
We're rolling.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not even going to
so.
stop
This is
it.
this is the star I was wearing on my coat in Drancy. Otherwise, I never wore a star. Remember, in the village, I never wore a star, David. That was the only time.
And what?
In the camp, which was ridiculous because everybody was Jewish, or most. What do you-
What item of clothing was it sewed onto?
I'm sorry?
What piece of clothing was it actually sewn onto?
On the coat, always on the outside. So if you wore a coat, only a coat. If you wore just a jacket, it'd be on the left-hand side.
And why did you decide to keep it?
Oh, I did not keep it. It's Georges who kept. I found, actually Tommy found, in a garage of Mariette, a lot of different things. And among other things that George had kept, he had kept his and Mariette and mine too. So this is just in Nancy that I wore this. And you're going to see a picture. The picture of Georges in the envelope, maybe. There's a picture here. There's a picture of us in the camp. Yes.
Okay, should we put that up?
Now in May 44, the what was Monsieur Mercier, I think it was, from the Red Cross, came to inspect the camp, and they wanted, to have. Apparently, he wrote a big thing that it was proper and it was well kept and so he took us in picture. So this was George, Mariette, and I. May 44. And the three of us, you can see, with the star. Right.
And how did you? Is this an original or is this a copy of?
No, that's an original. This one, I think. I have a few copies of this, actually. Yeah.
And how did you come about?
Well, that was then George had it among his thing. I don't know exactly, and we found that in a garage of Mariette after when we had to empty the apartment in the garage. She had put all this thing, number of things, and so they wanted to show how the camp was well kept and apparently.
Do you remember when this photo was
No.
taken?
Absolutely not. No, I do not. No, I do not. And when I look at myself here, and then later on, I just don't look the same at all. That, a few months later, I look differently. And you're going to see. There is a picture of Mariette. No, not this one. A small picture too. No, that's a picture with my mother. Maybe in the envelope? Can you look in the envelope? No? Oh, yes, this one, sorry. Tommy put it in a frame. Thank you. So this is probably maybe August 44, August or September. And we are in Neuilly, in front of the building where her mother lived. So we were occupying that apartment. Here, this is Mariette.
So
And
this is
I-
1944, right after liberation.
So, August, September, that must have been September. September, because then I went back to Montreuil for school. So let's say September, because we were already in an apartment before we were not. In August we were not. So let's say September 44.
And what do you notice about yourself in this photograph?
Well, first of all, I'm holding a doll. I'm dressed differently. I have, I don't look like this. I look, over there, I was looking like this. And I have my doll, whom I always call, any doll I call Tosca, my mother. And and Mariette also is looking quite different.
Is the name, I know Tosca was your mother's name. Has that name continued in the family?
Yeah.
Other than through dolls?
Yeah, right. Her parents must have called her Tosca, I believe. And everybody always called her Tosca. Yeah. So I never heard. Tony, I didn't know Tony until I saw the birth certificate. That her real name was on her birth certificate, it's Tony. But it's Tosca.
Do any children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren carry that name?
Yeah, my daughter's middle name is Tosca. The one we're going to celebrate tomorrow is Emmy Tosca. Also. Wait, I'm just trying to think. There's another one. No, I think it's... yeah. This is my mother with me in 39. No, I don't know if it's going to go, yeah. I think in the Loire Valley, we were seeing the castle of Blois, so Chambord. Right. I have a lot of curly hair. She had very curly hair. She was dark hair, but also very curly.
I mean, you were separated from your mum so young. What memories remain of her?
I don't remember because I was too young. I don't. And that makes me feel sad because I don't remember. I do not.
Are there any kind of, maybe not conscious memories, but kind of
Oh,
feelings?
but when I talk about, I become very emotional every time. But I don't remember. I don't remember how. See, I mean, here I was too young because I was only 3. But even, a little later, no, I do not. And I know now, I think, children remember probably much younger, now. This is the grandparents, paternal. When they came, and of course we went to official photographer, my dad, my mom, my grandfather, we went to Israel, my grandmother. My 2 grandmothers had the first name Sarah. So this was Sarah, this was Nachman. And I was 1.
And where would this have been taken?
This was taken probably in either in Bernay or no, I cannot see. I think it says the town or Évreux or yeah, this was 17 October 1937.
Perhaps if we zoom in on it, you can see what the writing says at the bottom.
And I searched for her grave. I haven't been able to find it yet. We went to Togofumos in the cemetery the first time with my husband in the 1993, 94. And, you know, nobody, we went with somebody who spoke Romanian, of course. Nobody, and we went to the city hall of that village. First, they knew nothing about. I had a street, but it had been part of the ghetto. You know, nobody knew anything about it. And then somebody who was waiting for the mayor said, "Oh yeah, I know the farmer who probably has the keys." Told us where to go. We went to the farmer near the cemetery, who had the keys of the cemetery, and he had a book. And we looked for the name, we couldn't. But it's all, of course, in, you know, the names of the graves are all in Hebrew. So, it's complicated, but I think she was not buried there. I think she's buried in another town. And now we went back not long ago, and unfortunately, the grass is growing, and it's going to, in a few years, you're not going to be able to see the graves at all. This was the, when I was talking about the fire. So, Yves Jalère, my maiden name, Nicole, when I was born. Nationality, Romanian parents. Profession, écolière, you know, pupil. And domicile. What did I say here? When I was living. But what is important is this B. When you were in the camp for a short time, you had a B. If you had a C, you were in the block 3. So somebody decided to cross the B, and that's what freed me, was I was a C. Because then I was in the block 3 until I could have been, you know, I could have gone with everybody else, but for a while I was in block 3. And that's everybody.
Can we
Do you
put
want
it
to?
on the
Yeah.
screen just so the camera can zoom in a little?
This is what the French call the fiche, and they have at the show in Paris, everybody's fiche like that.
Do similar fiches exist for your parents?
Yes, right, exactly. And on my dad, it shows Birkenau, it shows Yavozno, it shows Bleshhammer, and then with you know, with an L, liberated. So at the memorial in Paris, they have lots of them, you know. But you know, I didn't realize that you have to actually request them.
Presumably the same thing exists for Georges and Mariette as well.
Yes. So then is the other one, when I was liberated, with an L. And again, here it shows Montreuil. No, it doesn't show Montreuil, where I was from. But here, it shows where I was living in Neuilly, on the street.
So
We requested them, I guess.
Who?
Georges, all my dad, when he came back, because I have my dad also, it's possible.
Is
My
this
dad.
from the same thing as you just showed us?
Yes.
Or a later? It's the
Right.
same document.
It's the
piece?
same document, but different because I was liberated, so it shows the L.
So when was this document actually written?
Well,
Created.
it was, I don't actually know.
It must have been after liberation, right?
Right, yes, yeah. No, that was, yeah. The 18, it looks like the 18 August 44.
Wow.
Yeah, so I suppose it was it was Georges, because my dad hadn't returned in 44.
And was the 18th of August the date you were liberated, or was it?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where they put it. The L.
I think that's all the documents and photos.
Yes, I think that's all right.
Yeah, it looks like.
Yep.
So, any final words? To say?
No, my final words are for her memory. That's my final words. And all the members of my family agreed that she should be remembered. They were all so close to her that they all agree this is the right thing to do. And she, I know she would be happy. Because it's coming from all of us, so she would be happy. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for you guys.
Thank
help
you.
as well, all of you.
Yeah, thank
No,
you.
it's amazing.
I'm gonna take pictures of these. Or do you need pictures of these individually?
Whatever
I'll
you
just
think.
get 'em all
Whatever.
on.
How did we do?
I'm not sure actually.
Is it,
It's almost 1:30, I think.
oh,
Okay.
so that's pretty good.
It is.
You're right. You were right when you told me that
Time
it
flies,
was.
right?
It does.
Yeah, yeah.
Once you start going, you.
Tommy,
It really does.
okay, did I do okay?
Oh, you
Yeah.
were amazing.
This is amazing.
Wonderful.
A plus.
You were amazing.
Thank you.
Just
That might be right. Accidentally.
Oh, I'm
And
amazed.
then I want to take some pictures of you all
Okay.
together.
I'm terribly unphotogenic, but. I thank you both for being here.
It's a pleasure to be able to hear,
I
be a part of this
know.
project and to be
It's-
able to hear these stories. It's just incredible.
I
So it's our
know.
pleasure to help.
There's a not
Thank
run
you.
of the mill story.
No,
you
no,
know?
no.
Amazing.
No.
And evidently, Mariette wasn't a run of the mill person.
No, she no, you can ask Tommy, who knows quite a bit.
Well, she lived to be 98. So
Yeah.
She lived to be 98. And Tommy spent a lot of time also with her. He spent a lot of time. Because,
she was also very modest. Whenever we'd say what you had done, she'd said, "No, c'était le bon Dieu." It was God.
yes, yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. mean, she effectively is kind of responsible for the children, grandchildren,
Absolutely,
great-grandchildren.
absolutely.
And I guess if you're the child generation, that means great-great-grandchildren too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know if there was any other people that she had helped in that camp in terms of being able to get them to be changed?
I don't know. No, I don't. I don't think so because
Would it have been
I,
hard for her to, I mean, already taking care of one
Right.
person that you're kind of
Yeah.
keeping away with
Yeah, I
your
couldn't-
suspicion
Right.
potentially. So if you tried to get a whole number of people, it's going to jeopardize everything.
She remembered that most of the children arrive unaccompanied, so the women would look after them for a day or two until they were deported.
I mean, that has to be psychologically awful for her. I mean, to see. I mean, obviously, with the weight of potential her own deportation and George's anyway. Anyway, thank you. I hope it was an okay experience for you.
no, no. I'm kind of a reserved, shy person, so I had, to think about. But no,
You were
I
wonderful. It
but I
was-
wanted to, yeah. But she, I think about her all the time. Now she's gone, but all the time, and as often as we could, we were in Paris and with her, all of us with my children, and she came to the state. She came twice actually, Tommy. She came. I'm sorry. She came 3 times. We were living in Vermont. When my husband was teaching at UVM there. And she came to Vermont. I remember she liked Vermont a lot. We took her to Stowe and we took her. And then she came to, she came to Friendship Heights when we were living. No, she came.
I realised I had a couple of names. I just wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
got the correct spelling. The Hervieux family.
Yeah, HERVIEU.
Mhm. Okay, perfect. I had it almost right. I put an X on the end, but okay.
Yeah, well, it's true. There might be some name, some of you with X.
In the
No,
plural.
it has no.
Okay, so it's Hervieux. And then the Wallach, is that W-A-L-L-A-C-H?
WALLACH, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Dreyfus.
Yeah, that was DREYFUS.
R-E-Y.
YFUS.
Oh, like Dreyfus without the D.
No, the Dreyfus, like, Dreyfus, no?
So was the name Dreyfus or Dreyfus?
Dre,
Yeah,
D,
Dreyfus,
sorry.
okay, okay, that's good.
DR.
And then, and I can't, maybe you told me this, but I just didn't remember it. The factory owners in Montreuil.
Oh, yeah. Their name was Deblon, DEBLON.
One word?
Yeah,
Deblon.
Deblon. And I tried.
And they had the house on the hill where you stayed.
Yeah, I think that's them, yeah.
Yeah.
But, I tried to, when I was in Montreuil, the factory is not a factory anymore. They're not there anymore. Now it's some kind of a mill. Because, I was curious. I searched for the mailman family too. Went back and tried to go and see them and thank them and all that. I couldn't find people.
And
People.
what was that family's name, the mailman?
That was Gaillot. I think it was GAILLOT, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find anybody in the village. They were not,
Yeah.
nobody.
At a certain time, new generations come and no one remembers.
No, there was somebody else living, and nobody knew about them, and nobody knew where they had gone to. So, I mean, they wouldn't be living there anymore, but the family, you know, maybe, but no, I couldn't find.
Thank you. Okay. I think that was all my questions. And so your paternal grandparents, father's parents,
Yeah.
from Romania, their last name would have been spelled Ialer, did you say?
Yeah, on their birth certificate, it's Ialia. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's always with the same name can be spelled different phonetics.
Right.
It's the-
Yeah. And Luc, you know, I talked about my father in France, it was Luc, but it was more Levi Luc. Levi Luc.
Mhm.
Leivi.
Mhm.
You know, Luc. But of course, in French, that makes sense. It just
Makes sense.
drops a Levi. And
Mhm. Okay.
no, but it's funny because the reporter who interviewed my father, and last time we saw him, and he said, "Oh, just a minute, I'll go to the city hall," and he came back with a document. The prefect writing to the mayors at the time, before the Jews and couldn't do this and that, and in pencil on the column on the side, it said "Protestant."
Hmm.
And I don't know. The mayor was trying to say, but the state police, the gendarmes, you know,
Yeah.
knew. And I mean, the gendarme with it. But you know, you think about my dad. He couldn't do anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
I mean,
not-
he could, you know,
it wasn't a situation where he had control. I mean, there's-
they couldn't do it. At the last moment, they couldn't do. They couldn't. They couldn't run away, and
No,
You
in the
know-
movies, people seem to get hidden and all sorts of things happen, or they make it over the border into Spain, but
it's a little bit divorced from the reality of.
you have to be organized, plan
It's
your
not, yeah,
stuff.
it's not as simple. You can't
You know,
rely on
in
luck.
advance, you have to plan your going south,
Yeah.
because some members of the family, cousins, went south. My aunt, the sister of my brother, they went south.
Mhm.
You know, and they survived down south. Claudie, yeah, and then went to Israel actually. You know, but you had to.
Yeah, I
play.
mean, you know, I try and think of it myself with a child. You know, how would we just go? How are you going to have that foresight, that ability, the connections, the money, the everything, and you know, and the feeling that you can do it? You might just be like, it's not gonna be that bad, you know, whatever. But yeah.
Well, I mean, in 1940, you have a lot of people on the roads, and you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
We should probably realize you need to back
Oh,
up
no,
and
I
do
just
other
want to get a
things.
picture of
Oh,
both
yeah,
of
sure.
you. Let's see. Do you want to get next to her or stand or?
Shall I can crouch down once. Oh,
Okay.
I can hit my head on the boom.
Oh,
right?
yeah, no. Oh, yeah, here we go. It might be the cleanup.
Oh, sure.
Oh,
Or shall I come the
yeah.
other side so it's not?
No,
All right.
no, I kind
No,
of like
this
the
is.
plant.
Let's move this out of the way.
Wait, you might want this then. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
With Tom?
could I? Oh no. no,
Oh,
just
okay.
let me-
Oh, he's
Oh,
do. He's.
yeah, please.
All right, thanks.
Yes.
Oh, actually, can you just get one of them first? and then-
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, ready?
They're more important.
2, 3. Okay.
That's good.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Take it.
Is it,
How long is it?
is it being bad?
Oh, no, it's good.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, 1, 2.
I wanted to say, you have a son?
I do.
Oh, hey.
You could not have a better son than your son.
I believe it.
No,
He's a wonderful son. He is.
yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Well, I feel like
He
the
has a
love
lot-
that you receive, you were able to share and pass down through the generations. It makes that came through really clearly in what you were saying.
Her eyes were
He's a
closed.
wonderful
okay,
human being.
sorry, I
Is it
missed
fine?
it.
Oh, just so that. Yeah,
Oh,
thanks.
okay.
I'm terrible. I also close my eyes for all fours.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank
I'd love
you.
one with you, too.
Sure.
Can you pick one? Or I could do a selfie.
It's coming around.
Yeah, okay. Oh, thank you.
Would you want
Oh,
this
it's
one?
such a pleasure.
Thank you.
My eyes are closed in mine as well.
Oh,
You
no.
don't-
Oh,
That's not you,
no.
that's me. I'm an eye closer.
Well, it's hard to.
Oh, you close your eyes with
It's
me.
hard to
I
know.
always do.
Alright, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I think I took it.
There'll be one in there.
I
Like a
should
real- like
say,
a real cameraman.
thank you very much to all of you.
Yeah, thank
you
Really.
very much.
Thank you.
You've been so nice to me, so that's why I was able to.
Such an honor.
And Bonnie, will you be able to share some of those photos with us?
Oh, yeah. I usually do that.
The one thing I'll say, if you're sharing the one with you and Tom in, I'm going to need you to sign releases. So either don't share
Yeah,
those
just do
ones,
them
or,
all.
or you can share them, but I'll just have a release, because otherwise
Yeah.
we won't be able to use it and all that kind of
Oh,
nonsense.
do you want me to?
Let me go. Oh, it's up to you. It might be nice to have.
Oh, it would be nice.
Okay, all right.
Unless
Yeah.
you're
Boy.
strongly opposed.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no.
The worst case
Yeah.
scenario, the Shoah Foundation might use it in promotional material
No, that's
for
fine.
this program
That's
to
fine.
encourage
No, I just didn't
Holocaust
want to be, I
survivors to
know,
talk.
and probably some